A solar eclipse is essentially a supercharged new moon, and while a standard new moon is a monthly reset, a solar eclipse often triggers a distinct and faded reboot that plays out over the next 6 months to a year. And when this occurs in Aquarius, which is fixed air, the reset is centered on intellect, social structures, and future visions. Aquarius energy is naturally innovative, rebellious, and a little bit wired and eccentric, but ultimately connected to a larger goal. And so when you have a solar eclipse and you have Aquarius, in some ways the energy brings a sudden shift almost into a future timeline. And whether this energy shows up through a singular, unexpected external moment, or a not so simple Aquarian download, or a symphony of events in your life, I don't know, it'll depend, but also whether this energy presents through a redirection or a simple renovation of your current direction. This could differ for everybody in true Aquarian fashion. And this could look like a daily routine that completely overwhelms you with unexpected twists and turns. It could look like an unexpected and fated meeting that completely shifts your trajectory, or it could simply be a mentally wired urge that through the Aquarian current pushes you to rebel against what is outdated in your life. But what we do know, no matter whether this energy feels electric and exciting or overwhelming and chaotic, is that this energy will spark change in our lives. And it is up to us to take this wired energy and channel it towards a new and innovative direction that better serves us or something bigger. And so here is your Aquarius solar eclipse 2026 forecast. Whoosh. And note, next month there will be a Virgo lunar eclipse, which I will also be creating a forecast for later in the month. And so in this video specifically, I will go over a forecast based on your rising sign, kind of to let you know where this wired or electric or sudden shift is happening in your life. But I will also be going over a forecast based on your natal sun sign by sign and house, because the solar eclipse is all about the sun energy. And so that will have some effect on your ego or maybe your energy, your vitality levels. And then not only that, I will also be going over a forecast based on your Saturn placement by sign and house. The reason I chose Saturn is that it traditionally rules over Aquarius, and I didn't do Uranus even though it's the modern ruler, because I find that by doing the Saturn forecast by sign and house, it will be a lot more relevant to your life, as well as how you take discipline and how you take charge of your life. Whereas we know this Aquarius eclipse is going to be wired, I don't think the Uranus forecast will add much to that. But what every forecast is going to have in common, no matter which one you click on, is that they will all include applicable tips and tricks to kind of help you get through this wired energy and to sort of ground yourself, or to manage this energy, or to redirect it in a way that can truly benefit your life. And so now that we have that out of the way, go down to the description, look for your timestamps, click it, take it in, take a screenshot of the tips and tricks if you have to, and let's get to the heart of the matter in 3, 2, 1, go. Aries Rising, for you, the solar eclipse in Aquarius really creates a distinct static charge in the 11th house, or the area of your chart governing social architecture, long-term hopes, and the collective groups you belong to. And the sensation of this transit is less about emotional heaviness and more about the high-frequency mental vibration, or a wired feeling that pervades your interactions with your wider network. And it could feel like walking into a familiar room where the furniture hasn't moved, but the air pressure has dropped significantly, really signaling that the atmosphere has fundamentally changed. And you could experience a physical restlessness, or maybe an inability to settle into the comfortable rhythms of your usual group dynamics, or a sense that the grid of your social reality is kind of flickering, and the structures of your friendships or your future goals that you have built your identity around could become very porous, or they could be, changeable in some way. And this is not necessarily a destruction of your community, but it really is a sudden electric urge, at the very least, to renovate how you occupy space within a larger network. And so the energy is cerebral yet urgent. It's like a sudden realization that the map you have been using to navigate your social circles could be a little bit outdated, and it could feel like a quiet internal rebellion against conformity, or a not so simple Aquarian download suggesting that you no longer fit in the boxes that you constructed for yourself years ago. And so you could feel a somatic buzz or a literal vibration in in your nervous system, urging you to step back and observe the collective from a detached, objective distance before deciding where you truly belong. And so the caution here really lies in the volatility of your reaction to the collective, and the urge for rebellion could be so potent that you could burn a bridge that only needed a renovation, not a demolition. And Aquarius energy can be detached, and if you lean too far into this, you risk alienating support systems that you actually still need, or you risk feeling like an outsider. And be careful not to confuse a temporary feeling of not fitting in with a permanent need to isolate. And so the wired feeling can lead to impulsive exits, maybe leaving a group chat or quitting a board, ghosting a friend, maybe blacking out your social media, that really stem from overstimulation rather than genuine alignment. But the opportunity is massive. It's to renovate your place in society. And this is really your chance to find the people or the groups who are speaking your future language, not your past one. And the eclipse really provides the energy to break free from peer pressure or societal expectations that have been silently suffocating your individuality. And if you allow the redirection to really come to you, you can align yourself with the goals that are truly innovative and forward thinking. And this is about updating your vision board, not just with new pictures, but with a whole new operating system. So use this time to objectively audit how you fit into society, who fuels your genius, who fuels maybe you know a past habit that doesn't really help you. And the redirection here is towards a community or a cause that allows you to be an individual within a group, a true individual that's authentic, rather than forcing yourself to really dissolve within it. Taurus rising, this eclipse really strikes the very pinnacle of your chart, the 10th house. And so the energy here is highly visible, exposing the structures of maybe your career and your authority or your leadership to the erratic lightning bolt nature of Aquarius. And so somatically, this could feel like a little bit of a sense of vertigo, as if the ladder you're climbing has suddenly become transparent or shifted its angle, or maybe, the handholds feel a little bit weird. And so you could feel a pressure in your chest related to responsibility, but mixed with a frantic, almost wired desire to throw off the weight of expectation. And it is the feeling of wearing a uniform that suddenly feels two sizes too small, and it's made of itchy material and you just want to rip it off. And the structure of your professional life, maybe the title, the reputation, the path, or, just even like what you want to do in terms of like your contribution could become a little bit unstable, or it's simply changing in some way. It doesn't have to be uprooted, if that makes sense. And because this isn't necessarily a collapse, but a sudden electrification. And so you could feel exposed or hyper aware of how you are perceived, yet simultaneously detached from it, looking at your own public role as if it belongs to a stranger. And the atmosphere around you at work or with your goals, even if you may not have a job, it could feel brittle, as if one wrong move could shatter the protocol, or conversely, as if a breakthrough is hovering just above your head, waiting for the lightning rod to strike. And so the danger here is impulsivity in high stakes environments, and the 10th house is the public eye. What happens here is seen. So the urge for rebellion against authority or tradition could lead you to making moves that look like self sabotage to the outside world, which, isn't always great. But also be wary of rage quitting or publicly blasting an employer on social media during the eclipse window, or just blasting them, without taking time to collect yourself, or, letting it get to you, even if it's a more internal eclipse for you. And the wired energy can make you come across as maybe erratic or unreliable, which could threaten the stability that Taurus usually craves, because there is a nuance between breaking a glass ceiling and just breaking the glass. Aim for the former, but the opportunity is so deep because it's to liberate your legacy from tradition. It's to do something off the beaten path that aligns with you. And you are being given permission to invent a career path, or maybe the way that you do your current career that doesn't exist yet, that's more aligned with you. And this is about leadership that is innovative, perhaps managing others in a way that is flatter or more democratic or more technological, or, going off a path that doesn't fit the stereotypical 9 to 5. And if you have felt stifled by the rigid structures of your industry, the eclipse is your sledgehammer. And you can pivot your public image from a worker bee to a visionary. And the redirection is asking you to stop climbing the ladder and instead start to build the elevator. Gemini Rising, for you, the eclipse takes place in the ninth house, which is the sector of your chart that governs your worldview, your philosophy, and the literal or metaphorical horizons that you chase. And the sensation of this energy is mental velocity. So your mind, which is usually quick as a Gemini Rising, could enter a state of hyperdrive. You could be very mentally busy, and it could feel like your brain is a radio picking up frequencies from a distant station that disrupts your usual programming, and you could feel a physical sense of restlessness in your legs, maybe like an itch to go somewhere that's almost like painful, like you just want to like move anywhere rather than where you are right now. Or you could feel a sensation of claustrophobia with your current belief systems if this is a more internal energy for you. And the structures being renovated here are maybe your dogmas, your education paths, and even your moral compass in some cases. And you may experience a not so simple Aquarian download that completely shatters the truth you held to be absolute. And it feels like waking up and kind of realizing that the map you are holding, it's kind of for a different planet, if that makes sense. Like you're not following the guide that you're supposed to. And the energy is expansive, but it could be erratic. So flashes of insight about the meaning of life could, suddenly come at 3 a.m. I had an eclipse in my ninth house recently. It was when the Aries eclipse happened. I think it was last year. That's how it popped up for me. But there could also be a sudden wired intolerance for small mindedness or routine conversations, and so the caution is against intellectual arrogance or flightiness at this time because the ninth house seeks truth, but Aquarius can be very fixed and very stubborn. So you could become so convinced of your new download that you become preachy or dismissive of others' views, or you could, beat yourself up for being wrong about what your views are. And there's also a risk of abandoning a long-term educational or travel goal simply because you are bored or restless or you feel hopeless almost. And also be careful not to confuse a temporary wanderlust with a genuine need for relocation because the wired energy could lead to fanatical thinking if not grounded. But the opportunity is to really upgrade your wisdom at this time. And this is a chance to expand your mind into territories that were previously off limits. And you have the chance to become a thought leader, maybe to publish, to teach, or to speak on subjects that are progressive or cutting edge, or you could even adopt them as well, even if you're at stage one. And this could completely, change your direction. And the eclipse really supports a renovation of your life philosophy, moving from a rigid set of rules to a more humanitarian, inclusive, or scientific understanding of the universe. Even if you already have that, maybe it just, gets refined a little bit. Or if you're a writer, for example, or a student, this is kind of your breakthrough moment where you can connect the dots that nobody else sees that can really take you to the next step. Cancer rising. This is perhaps the most intense placement for the eclipse to happen. It's happening in your eighth house of the shadow, intimacy, shared assets. It's kind of the things that are in your life that are outside of your control. If the second house, which is the opposite, is kind of the resources you own. And so the energy here is very subterranean yet electric. And you could feel this somatically in your gut or a deep rhythmic thrumming almost that signals a change in your foundational security. You could feel this like very deep, but also it has little ticks because this is Aquarius after all. And so the structures becoming wired and unpredictable are maybe the unseen contracts that you have with others, maybe your debts, your investments, your spousal agreements, and your deep psychological entanglements. And it can feel like having the lights suddenly being turned on in a dark basement in your life, really revealing cracks in the foundation that you did not know were there. And you could experience a surge of adrenaline really related to survival instincts or sudden rebellious desire to sever ties of a dependency you have in your life. Could be emotional, could be literal. And this is not just surface level stress you'll feel, it'll be a very deep and primal renovation of how you bond and how you exchange power. And the Aquarian download here could really come in the form of a sudden psychological breakthrough, and you could realize that you are no longer afraid of something that has terrified you for decades simply because you have zoomed out enough to see it more objectively instead of getting lost in that pool. And so the danger here is really reactive independence in sensitive matters because the eighth house deals with trust and vulnerability, and the Aquarian urge to detach can make you seem cold or ruthless to those you love. But in financial matters as well, be very cautious of unpredictable schemes or making sudden moves with a large sum of money based on a hunch, or, going crazy with your credit card if that is relevant to you, because the wired energy can lead to rash decisions about shared assets that leave you unprotected or could, have long term effects like you got to spend 5 years paying off that credit card because you wanted to go to Bali. And so do not sever a vital support line just to prove that you don't need it as well, because this is also a risk. But the opportunity is true liberation from debt, both financial and emotional. Even if it's not like a literal liberation, it could be like you know what to do about it now, because this eclipse allows you to rewrite the contracts of your life. And if you have been financially dependent on a controlling force, this is the energy that can help you learn how to break free from that. And if you have been emotionally held hostage by a fear of abandonment, this energy kind of gives you the objective distance to see that you are safe on your own. And the renovation is about moving from codependency to interdependency, however that looks for you. And you can translate your relationship with power, really stepping into a role where you manage resources or things outside of your control in an innovative way and a cool-headed strategy rather than fear, because these downloads were processed correctly and you were able to take charge of your life and your fears. Leo risings, welcome to the club. For you, the Aquarius solar eclipse will send a high voltage current directly into the seventh house, which is the sector of your chart that governs your committed relationships, one-on-one connections, business contracts, maybe platonic bonds. It's basically the way that you mirror others. And the sensation of this transit could be experienced as a sudden change in the air pressure between you and people that you're close to, your one-on-one connections, your coworkers, whatever resonates. And you could feel a wired tension in your one-on-one interactions, or a sense that the usual script of your relationship has been lost or scrambled. And so the structure of your commitments, whether marriage, business partnerships, or even long-standing rivalries, could become a little bit porous or unpredictable. I'm a Leo rising, by the way. I'm already seeing this. It's not necessarily bad, but things are definitely changing, and it could be for the good. We'll have to see how the rest plays out. And so this could feel like maybe a person sitting across from you has suddenly changed frequencies, or maybe you have developed a sudden intolerance for dependency and you change your idea of how you want to relate, even if this isn't about a specific person. And this isn't necessarily about conflict, like I said, but rather it's a sharp, cool breeze of detachment flowing through your unions, which you might need. Because for me, for example, I latch on to people too hard, and I got to learn not to do that, or not to be a people pleaser. And so you could feel a somatic urge to pull away physically just to reclaim your own orbit, if that makes sense. Or conversely, you could be on the receiving end of a partner's sudden need for radical autonomy, and the energy is asking you to renovate the contract of us to ensure it allows for the freedom of I. And so the caution here is really projecting your own need for freedom onto others, or reacting to a partner's need for space, or someone else's need for space, or to be so independent and to reject relationships altogether because you don't think that there's a right way to do it, and that could leave you to feeling lonely. And so the urge for rebellion in the seventh house could lead to abrupt breakups or severing contracts that just needed an update. But be careful as well of this wired energy making you aloof or dismissive of others' feelings in an attempt to protect your own autonomy. But also avoid testing relationships just to see if they break, because they could actually break. Communicate if something comes up. But the opportunity is massive. It's to reinvent the concept of partnership. And this is the chance to really draft a new relationship agreements that is almost innovative. It's fair, it's progressive, and it doesn't cost you yourself. And you can move from the dynamic of codependency, or radical independency, if that's what you lean towards, to one of conscious collaboration. And if you are single, this energy could redirect you towards partners who are truly your equals, or who stimulate your mind, not just your ego. And the renovation here is about finding people in your life one-on-one who support your individuality rather than suppress it. And that's how you can make the most of this energy. Virgo rising, this eclipse will be hitting your sixth house. It's the engine room of your life. And the energy here could be somatic, very systematic. And you will likely feel this transit in the core of your nervous system more than any other sign. With an Aquarius sixth house, this is already true for you, but you will feel it on overdrive. And the structures of your daily life, maybe your morning routine, your workflow, your diet, your physical habits, could become unstable or wired, not necessarily in a bad way, but in a way that will definitely call for revolution. And it can feel like the operating system of your life is undergoing a forced reboot. You could experience a sudden inability to tolerate your usual schedule, maybe a physical restlessness that makes sitting at your desk impossible, or even just a symphony of events where small, very practical things go wrong simultaneously, like your phone crashes at the same time that you misunderstood when your doctor's appointment is. And so now it's going to charge you $200. And you left the pizza in the oven, something like that. And this is the universe kind of interrupting your loop. And the Aquarian download here could manifest as a sudden insight as well into your health or work methodology, or maybe a realization that the way you have been working is actually inefficient or harming your body, really prompting an immediate need for change. And so the danger here is in anxiety or nervous system exhaustion, because Virgo energy tries to control the chaos, but Aquarius energy is chaos in the form of disruption. And so trying to fix the glitches too quickly or micromanage, repeat that phrase in your word, because I have a Virgo Mercury and I hear micromanage all the time and I still do it. And even though I know I do it, I don't realize I do it. Focus on micromanaging, or focus on not micromanaging the disruption, because this could lead to burnout or psychosomatic symptoms. And be wary also of hypochondria or obsessing over, your body or health abnormalities that are likely just stress responses to the energy. But also, if you are at work or you're doing a task or you're doing a habit, don't just rage quit whatever you're doing because the systems are frustrating you in the moment. Wait for the static to clear, wait for your nervous system to calm down before making any massive decisions in your life. But the opportunity for this transit is to modernize your life, because this is the ultimate life hack transit. And you have the chance to renovate your daily existence to be more efficient, less labor intensive. That is amazing, to not have a labor intensive day, or at least more aligned with your unique biology. And the redirection is towards working smarter, not harder. So use this energy to introduce technology or innovative methods that could automate the boring stuff in your life, or to adopt a health regimen that is cutting edge or experimental or something you've never tried before, because you're being asked to treat your body like a futuristic machine that needs an upgrade, not a beast or a burden. And that is how you can make the most of this energy. Libra rising, for you, the eclipse will electrify your fifth house, which is kind of the playground of your chart. And so the energy here, it could be very erratic, exciting, or at the very least, creatively volatile. And this could be a good thing, but it could also be, very anxiety inducing if you aren't paying attention to what is happening. And so you could feel a wired sensation in your heart center, or a buzzing need to maybe be seen, but not in the way that you usually present yourself. Maybe you want to create something, because the fifth house is all about creation, even if it's children, if it's art, if it's joy. It's the house of creation. And so the structures of how you experience joy, or how you create art, or how you engage in romance or with your children are being renovated. And so you could experience a sudden creative block that really, changes your usual medium, followed by an explosive urge to try something completely bizarre and avant garde. Do it. And if you do have children, the structure of your relationship with them could shift unexpectedly, or they may act out of, sort of rebellion, if that makes sense. So your kids could be a little naughty, if that makes sense. And so this transit could feel like a lightning strike to the muse of your life. And the Aquarian download could be a realization that maybe you've been performing happiness or creating what you think you should be creating, rather than expressing something, very raw or weird or authentically you. And so pay attention to, does this feel like me? And really be honest with that answer. And the urge is to break the rules of polite society and to follow your own fascination. And so the caution for this transit is recklessness in the pursuit of a thrill, because the fifth house rules gambling and risks on top of everything else. And so the wired energy could lead to impulsive financial speculations, or, romantic sort of gambles that are exciting but unstable. But also be careful not to blow up maybe a stable creative career or a loving relationship, or, a passion project, just because you're bored and seeking a dopamine hit and you want to find it somewhere else. And but also avoid treating people, especially children or lovers, as experiments if this is relevant, because the danger is prioritizing the rush over the reality. But the opportunity is to really birth something genius, because this is a fertile time for innovation of your self-expression. You could maybe renovate your brand or your artistic style to be a lot more ahead of the curve than it normally is. And the redirection is towards joy that is authentic and perhaps a little bit rebellious, but it'll take that lightning strike to really show you what that means. So just remember this forecast, even if you don't know what it pertains to yet, because this is the time to start the weird project or to date the person who isn't your usual type but fascinates your mind, or to allow your inner child to break the rules of etiquette to find true play in your life. Scorpio rising, this eclipse really shakes the very foundation of your chart. It's in an angular house. You will probably feel it potently because it is in your fourth house of home. And so the energy here is deeply personal and often could feel unsettling because it really affects the base of operations. It is your security, your safety. And so you could feel a somatic instability or a feeling of ungroundedness, even when you're just sitting on the couch and nothing's really happening, directly to you, because you could be perceiving everything happening in the world and that could overwhelm you. And the structures of your home life or your living situation or your relationship with your conditioning or your family or your lineage are becoming a little bit wired and unpredictable. And it can feel like the floorboards are kind of vibrating, and you could maybe experience a sudden urge to move or to renovate or to radically change the dynamics with family members. And the Aquarian download here could come in the form of a realization that something about your current environment or your family role or your conditioning is stifling your evolution and you want to break free of that. Or maybe you get, the jolt that lets you actually break free. And you could realize that you are carrying ancestral baggage that doesn't belong to you. And the urge for rebellion could manifest as a need to sever those roots to plant yourself somewhere new. And this is a renovation of what safety means to you. You can really change your home from a place of history to a place of future potential. And so the warning for this transit is in destabilization and emotional displacement, because the fourth house is where we retreat to feel safe. And if this area is too wired, you could feel so anxious or ungrounded in a way that, doesn't really allow you to relax even when you're at home. But also be careful of impulsive moves, literally packing your bags in the middle of the night or burning bridges with family members over temporary disagreements, or landlords if that's relevant, or roommates. Homes can come in a million different forms, and there is a nuance between setting boundaries and cutting people off. So try not to do the latter when your nervous system is fried, and also avoid making permanent real estate decisions based on a fleeting feeling of restlessness. And if you do feel it, you will know if it's the right move in your gut. There will be no question. So listen to that. But the opportunity here is to really build an innermost self or a home that reflects your future, and to take these downloads and redirect your sense of safety into something that actually homes you, if that makes sense. And you have the chance to clear out the psychic and physical clutter of your past. This is the perfect energy for literal renovation, especially one that updates the technology of your home or modernizes the aesthetic of your space, or, makes it uniquely you. And the redirection is towards emotional freedom, and you can establish a sense of belonging that is portable, that is, very true and authentic to you, but also one that will go wherever you go. So, home, how they say home is where the heart is. This is what you could actually discover as long as you're willing to break the chains that really, question your sense of stability and allow you to be free and safe, no matter how that looks. Sagittarius rising, for you, the Aquarius solar eclipse will send a surge of electricity through the third house, which is the sector of your chart that governs your mindset, your communication, your mental patterns, your immediate environment or neighborhood. And it's just how you process information or how you communicate it on a very core level. And the sensation of this transit is kind of like plugging a high voltage appliance into an old outlet. So maybe your mind could be racing or buzzing with ideas, words, and anxieties that feel very wired or futuristic. You could be worried about the future. You could be, perceiving the state of the world very mentally. And you could experience a physical inability to slow down your speech or your thoughts, which could lead to a feeling of restlessness. And this could be a good thing because that's how scientists works, right? But it could be, something that puts a burden on your mindset. And so the structures of your daily commute or your relationship with siblings or neighbors or your mindset and your usual way of learning could become a little bit unpredictable unpredictable, or they could call for a rebellion or a change. And it can feel like the algorithm of your daily life has kind of glitched. And so you could find yourself suddenly bored to tears by conversations that maybe usually interest you, or feeling of this like rebellious urge to speak a truth that is shocking or unconventional. Or you could have this Aquarian download that shifts your mindset. Maybe you're used to perceiving information one way and now you do it another. And there could be a sudden ability to understand complex systems, or to see a solution to a puzzle you've been staring at for months, or maybe you want to take on a new mental pursuit, or even writing. And so the caution for this transit is mental scattering, or maybe even verbal volatility, because the third house rules speech. And the wired energy can make you blurt out things that are true but harsh. You need to craft them carefully. Very Aquarian. Aquarian can be sudden, it can be detached, but there is a clever way to, word things. It could be with yourself as well. Maybe you need to word things differently to yourself because you're harsh on yourself. Or maybe something that you say or think is too radical for the room or even yourself to process, and it overwhelms you. And there is a risk of anxiety spiraling into worst case scenarios because your brain is moving faster than reality. But also be careful of nervous energy leading to accidents. Watch your step and your speed. This isn't to scare you, because if you're careful, you'll be fine. Trust me, I promise. And avoid getting into internet arguments or maybe even neighborhood feuds just because you are feeling restless and you need a mental outlet. This won't apply to everybody, but the opportunity is to upgrade your mind and your voice. And this is the best time to learn a new skill, especially one related to technology, science, or the future, or one that's a little bit, innovative or a little bit weird or eccentric. And you can renovate the way you communicate. Maybe you could start a podcast, write a manifesto, or simply change the way you speak to be more authentic and less performative. Or you could change your mindset towards yourself as well with these sudden downloads. And the redirection is really towards a mindset that is open, innovative, and unburdened by the dogmas of the past. And this mindset could completely alter the way that you perceive reality in a way that is more beneficial to you. Capricorn Rising, the eclipse strikes your second house, which is kind of the part of your chart that governs not just your assets or your money, although it does govern those things, but it covers the entire inventory of your values, your self worth. It's essentially what you own. And so the eclipse happening here could be a little bit shaky or destabilizing to your security, but potentially liberating for your self esteem, really acting like a sudden electrical surge in a static system. So you could feel maybe this somatic tension in your throat or your chest, which are areas that are biologically linked to where you hold and assert your value, as the structures of what you hold dear could be challenged. There could be a little bit of erratic energy, could be for better or for worse, like some sudden, changes in your life. And it could feel like the ground beneath your feet, which is usually a Capricorn's most reliable metric for safety, is vibrating with an unpredictable potential. And so you could feel a little bit destabilized. And so this is kind of about a rebellion against your own definition of worthiness, whether this eclipse manifests as monetary or value. And so the Aquarian download here is kind of going to be this stark realization that maybe your confidence has been tied to metrics that are kind of becoming obsolete to the changing world. And maybe this gives you a little bit of anxiety. Maybe the status or the external approval or the physical accumulation you once held dear, everything is changing, and it could make you question your values for better or for worse. And so the eclipse really urges you to detach from the physical proof of success and to instead recognize the immense value of your intellect, your skills, your character, and your intangible gifts or resources. It is a renovation of your net worth that really prioritizes the innovative parts of your soul over the parts that simply labor to earn, if that makes sense. And so the danger for this eclipse is kind of this poverty consciousness of the spirit, or maybe a reactionary sellout. And what I mean by that is maybe the urge to rebel against restriction, or, maybe the feeling of restriction and the uncertainty and the sporadic, energy happening can make you want to compromise your values for maybe a quick sense of relief or validation. This could come in numerous ways, could come with spending, could come with maybe even your self-esteem. Maybe you do anything for your self-esteem to be propped up, but also be careful about discarding things, whether relationships relationships, items, or principles that have long-term value. Just because maybe they feel heavy in the moment and you don't think it's worth it, really think through your values before you decide to make any decisions. And the wired energy can make you feel unworthy if you're not producing, really leading to burnout as you try to overcompensate. But the opportunity is to really rebuild your self-esteem on your own terms, but also you could have an opportunity to work smarter, not harder, when it comes to your skills or maybe your income or your money. And so this eclipse also allows you to see that you're valuable because of your innovative mind and your specific frequency, not just what you build or buy. And ideally, this can lead to a renovation of your value system and your skills. Maybe you take on maybe like coding or a very Aquarian skill to help you earn, or you have a very Aquarian upgrade to your self-esteem. And the redirection is really towards a state of being where you feel rich in options, rich in self-respect, and rich in freedom, regardless of what you own. Aquarius Rising, this is your eclipse. It is happening in the first house of identity. It's the very core of who you are and how you interface with the world. And so the energy is intensely personal. It could be electric and physically palpable. You will feel it no matter if it's like making any contacts to any planets, even if it's far away from your ascendant, you will still feel it and you will act as the lightning rod for this entire transit, processing the collective shift through your own body. You probably already feel this shift. There's been an Aquarius stellium going on for a bit, and you could feel it buzzing in your nervous system or a sense of high frequency vibration, or even just a wired restlessness that makes it difficult to remain in one place or one state of mind. You are kind of changing, but on a quantum level where your brain is going kind of all over the place, but it could be in a very good way, kind of like you're computing the changes in real time. And so the structure being renovated at this time is you. It's your avatar, your label, and your vitality, the way you introduce yourself, the way you dress, the way you see yourself, the way you perceive yourself, and the name you answer to. Maybe the things that really aligned with you in the past suddenly feel restrictive. It's like a garment that has shrunk in the wash. And this isn't necessarily an identity crisis, but it will be an upgrade, hopefully, no matter what. And so you could look in the mirror and experience a moment of dissonance, realizing that the person reflecting back is a version of you that expired months ago. And the Aquarian download could be a moment of radical individuation, kind of where you decide to stop performing human in a way that society expects you to, and you start operating on your own unique frequency. And there could be something, external that really kind of pivots your entire direction of who you are. So I would pay attention to sudden events as well. And so the caution of this transit is becoming so detached that you alienate your support system. And the energy is so high voltage that you do risk short circuiting. Maybe nervous system exhaustion is a real possibility if you don't pace yourself. And the urge for radical independence can lead you to burn bridges simply because you feel crowded, or to change so rapidly that maybe other people around you feel left behind. And so don't isolate at this time. When something happens in your first house, it is easy to isolate because there is really a difference between being unique and, being your true self, and also being unapproachable. And so be mindful of that. But the opportunity is a total self reinvention without apology, but also a complete like new skin that you can wear that you feel a lot more comfortable in, whether it's an internal skin of like how you want to identify or an external one. And this is what's getting upgraded. And there is no better time to change your trajectory, your look, or your title. And you kind of have the cosmic green light at this time to strip away the layers of social conditioning and to reveal your authentic, perhaps unconventional core. And the redirection is towards a life where you are the active protagonist, not a supporting character in someone else's story. And you are aligning your external reality with your internal truth. And that is the best opportunity you could receive at this time. Pisces Rising, this eclipse takes place in the foggy, mystical, subconscious, sort of depths of the 12th house, which is the space behind the veil that governs your subconscious mind, your sleep, and the patterns you run on autopilot. It's kind of the unseen forces in your life, the the things that you can't really explain, but you know are there. And so for you, the event is almost entirely internal, yet louder than any external event that could happen. Although there could be something external that kind of triggers this internal, awakening or download, if that makes sense. And so the energy acts like a high frequency signal piercing through a quiet room. It's a psychic radio suddenly picking up a station that you didn't know existed. So pay attention to that station, even if it's just, a shift in the vibe that you can't really put into words. And so you could experience this somatically as a wired restlessness during sleep, maybe vivid or symbolic dreams, maybe even prophetic dreams in some cases, or a heightened sensitivity where you feel like you are absorbing the static electricity of the collective mood. You are probably taking on the collective mood right now, even if there are things that you're trying to avoid about it. And the structures being renovated here are kind of the psychological scripts that you have internalized over the years, maybe your hidden fears, your mechanisms for self-protection, and your spiritual frameworks. This isn't really a haunting, although it could feel like it for some people. It is a system diagnostic where maybe something that's been poking at your subconscious gets an electric jolt and now it's suddenly clear. And it feels like the lights have suddenly turned on in the basement you've been afraid to enter, really revealing that the looming shadows that maybe you thought were the, in quotations, monsters, is just, an old lamp or a pile of old laundry. And so the Aquarian download for you is kind of this flash of objective clarity regarding your self undoing, really allowing you to view your anxieties not as absolute truths or something that determines your fate, but as outdated software that can simply be uninstalled. It's just about whether you can recognize it. And because once you do, you have the key to really unlock your psyche. And so the caution during this transit lies in the temptation to drift into the ether, because the 12th house can be a place of escapism, and the electric Aquarian energy could manifest as anxiety or buzzing paranoia if it isn't grounded. And there is a risk of confusing genuine intuition with projection or fear. My secret to, sort of telling the difference between fear and intuition is, even if my intuition is saying something really bad, if it's true, it usually feels like oddly calming. Even if it's like, oh no, this thing's really bad, I feel calm about it. I don't know how to explain it. If it's like paralyzing fear, it's usually never true. But also be mindful of the urge to numb out with, maybe coping mechanisms like endless scrolling or overeating or excessive sleeping to quiet the mental noise, because the danger is becoming so detached from the physical world that you neglect the practical maintenance of your life, which could be rapidly changing at this time as well, because Aquarius energy can be very hard to tame. But the opportunity is deep, permanent healing through objectivity. The opportunity is to really unlock your subconscious, at least on an Aquarian level, and you can kind of figure out how to update your system to get you one step closer to the life you want to live. And you can release decades of emotional baggage at this time in the span of a few weeks, if you are willing to look at it with cool scientific detachment of Aquarius energy, rather than drowning maybe in the emotion or the sensitivity of Pisces. And the redirection is towards a life that is lighter, maybe less burdened by the past, is willing to look at things outside of the box, is willing to unpack their conditioning, and is clearer in their connection to the universal flow. And you are essentially preparing the empty space for your own rebirth. When the sun eventually moves into your sign, there'll be a whole stellium of planets there. Because if you're able to embrace, maybe the sudden realizations of this Aquarius eclipse, you will see the results of that unfolding so quickly and in ways that you could have never imagined. Aries Suns, your ego naturally operates like an arrow looking for a target. So maybe you want to move fast, or you just have a very forward perception of the world, or you want to make a singular impact. But the Aquarius eclipse is kind of like this vast electric grid rather than a single point. And so you could feel a strange diffusion of your usual drive, because the energy is being redistributed across a network. And it can feel like revving an engine in a room where there is nowhere to run, or realizing that the hero role has shifted from a solo warrior to the team captain. And so the nuance here is that you are simply being asked to widen your lens, and your energy or your vitality returns when you realize that being a catalyst for a bigger cause or maybe a group is just as powerful as leading any charge in your life alone. And so this eclipse urges you to trust the network that you have or the causes that you champion to carry your impulses forward into the future. Sun in Taurus, your ego finds safety in rhythm, in the steady heartbeat of the earth, and in the predictability of the senses. And so this eclipse is a high frequency synthesizer that speeds up the tempo without asking for permission. And so you might feel a literal hum in your nervous system at this time, kind of like this static as your body tries to metabolize this faster electric pace in the air. And while the sensation could be intense, it acts as a disruption of your usual calm, really creating moments where you feel wired and moments where you need deep and sudden rest. And so the shift here moves you towards finding your flow, and your vitality or your energy is preserved by upgrading your comfort zone to be flexible enough to handle the surge. And this eclipse offers this vibration as an invitation to learn a new, faster rhythm of stability in your life. Sun and Gemini, your ego is already a fast processor and you live for connection, data, and the exchange of ideas. And that's how you kind of, perceive the lens of your world. However, this eclipse kind of acts as a fiber optic upgrade that floods your system with more signal than you are used to. And you could find or feel like this thrill of mental velocity in your life where your thoughts are moving so fast that they overlap, really creating a sense of brilliance mixed with a little bit of scatter, energy. And the nuance lies in distinguishing between noise and vision. And so you could feel the urge to collect every piece of information, even though it leads to burnout. And so the real work at this time is in synthesis. And so your energy really depends on your ability to curate the input, really ignoring the static so you can focus on one radical futuristic idea in your life that actually matters. And this eclipse pushes you to find a single clear vision, as it is the only thing sharp enough to cut through the noise at this time. Sun in Cancer, your ego navigates the world through immersion and you feel the temperature of a room before you see the details. And so this eclipse brings a dry and detached and almost logical wind that can feel like a sudden drop in temperature in your life. And you could feel like you are standing on the shore looking at the ocean rather than floating in it. And it's a shift from feeling everything to observing everything. And it could manifest as a sense of coolness in your connections or a need to intellectualize your emotions to understand them. And this shift represents a gain in perspective. Your energy will be restored, though, when you realize that having boundaries at this time ensures that you are safe. And so, this eclipse will remind you that gaining altitude in life is the most effective way to protect the heart that you cherish. Sun in Leo, your ego is designed to radiate, to shine outward like a star, and to be the center of gravity. And so this eclipse flips the polarity, really asking you to receive the signal of the collective rather than broadcasting your own. And so you could feel a dimming of your, usual drive to, achieve something maybe, or a sense that your individual performance or, even just like your being is being absorbed into something much bigger than yourself. And it can feel like a quiet identity check where you wonder if you are seen or whether you're important, or it could manifest as a relief from the pressure to perform. Maybe you don't want to be like very performative. That's a Leo stereotype. And so the nuance is realizing that the light that you have can now be more shared, and your vitality comes back online when you start enjoying the harmony of the choir in your life. And so this eclipse kind of asks your light to merge with the constellation of, what's going on around you to create a brilliance that is greater than anything you could do alone. And so if there's any advice at this time, it's make connections where you can and to shine within those. Sun in Virgo, your ego filters reality through functionality, and you want to know how things work so you can make them work better. And so this eclipse introduces variables that could be a little bit erratic, unconventional, and impossible to predict. And you might feel a spike in mental tension as you try to organize chaos that refuses to be filed away. And this can manifest as a busy mind that cannot power down or a frustration with systems that seem to be glitching. And so the shift here calls for inventing a new model, and your vitality or your energy really recovers when you view the bugs in your system as features of a necessary, albeit messy, system upgrade. Upgrade is the key word here. And so this eclipse really reveals the glitch or the glitches that are happening in your life. And this is kind of designed to show you the precise areas of life that really require an upgrade. Sun in Libra, your ego often calibrates itself by checking the mirror of other people, or you like to relate to your environment in order to understand yourself better, and you find balance through this. And so this eclipse acts as a layer of autonomy and intellectual distance that shatters that mirror. And so you could feel a sudden stark objectivity about how you connect to the world, really seeing the dynamics clearly without the usual emotional softening. And this can manifest as a feeling of being out of sync with your usual partners, your usual collaborators, or even just a desire maybe to debate and define your own stance rather than to merge. And the nuance is that this distance offers a breadth in your life, and your vitality can return when you trust your own judgment enough to stand alone in what you believe in and realize that true connection requires two whole and independent people. And this eclipse really teaches you that standing alone strengthens the individual who holds up their half of the bridge. And this is how you can really create true balance in your life. Sun in Scorpio, your ego usually thrives on depth, subtext, and the power of what remains unseen and controlled. And this eclipse is a floodlight that demands transparency, airing out the basement and exposing the wires. And so you could feel a prickle of vulnerability or a defensive instinct to clamp down as things become very visible and open in your life. And this could manifest as a situation where maybe you feel vulnerable or your privacy is breached, or simply just this internal sensation of having your secrets or your protection feel heavy in your life. And the shift emphasizes release, and so your energy is preserved at this time. When you allow the doors to open, you can let the light in, because the exposure is actually the liberation that you've been waiting for, even if it feels intense. And this eclipse brings the light as the only agent capable of sanitizing the wounds that you've been guarding. Sun in Sagittarius, your ego is built on belief. You like to explore the world and your horizons. You want to see how things can be done bigger, maybe what your grand purpose is. And you really focus on the optimism of the journey. And so this eclipse kind of brings a shock of cold, hard data that challenges your faith with mechanics. And you might feel a restlessness that isn't satisfied by wondering or sense that the old map of your life doesn't match the new territory you're standing in. And so this can manifest as a dogma being debunked, or maybe like a travel plan being grounded in reality, or it could be a lot more nuanced than that, because the nuance lies in no matter what is happening in your life, knowing how it works, and your vitality can be renewed by studying the future with almost a scientific curiosity, because the horizon is still there, but you now need a new navigation system to reach it. And this eclipse really demands almost this scientific knowing, as the compass that guides you is really important now when the old map starts to fail. Sun in Capricorn, your ego really, finds direction in either structure, maybe in the climb of life, or in the authority of time and tradition in some way. And so this eclipse will shake up that scaffolding, really questioning the rules that you have worked so hard to master. And you might feel the weight of maybe this transition, or a heaviness that comes from realizing that the old hierarchy is shifting under your feet. And this can manifest as maybe a change in your status, or simply the internal realization that the ladder you're climbing is leaning against the wrong wall. And so the shift prioritizes innovation, and your vitality, your energy can return when you use your mastery to build something future proof and radical. And so this eclipse directs your eyes to the new summit that is rising in the distance. Sun in Aquarius, your ego is the conduit for this energy. It's happening in your sign. And so you are the wire through which this electricity will flow. And you could feel supercharged. You could feel buzzing with a physical intensity that borders on being overwhelming. And it can manifest as almost this manic desire to change everything in your life at once. Or maybe you just feel very plugged into the collective mood at once. So you can really perceive not only what's going on in your life, but the world as well. And so the nuance is that while you are the avatar of this energy, you are also the human body that needs to function, and your vitality depends entirely on being able to regulate. And you must ground this charge to avoid being overwhelmed. And so, unplugging from the matrix occasionally will prevent short circuiting. So, be the lightning rod at this time, but remember to touch the earth in whatever way resonates with you. And this eclipse warns that even the wildest of electricity really needs a ground wire to be useful. And so, remember this mantra at this time to really make the most of the energy. Sun in Pisces, your ego is a permeable membrane. You filter the world through intuition, dreams, and unity. You like to merge with something bigger, even if it's like a subconscious thing, you don't really, do it actively. And this eclipse is sharp, electric, and high definition, cutting through the fog like a laser. And so you could feel a sense of psychic status at this time, where the noise of the collective anxiety is loud and distracting, and it can manifest as a moment of maybe jarring clarity where maybe a delusion or something where, the veil was over your eyes is now shattered, or maybe there's just a feeling of being overstimulated by the harshness of reality. But you could also be inspired at this time because so many new ideas could hit you like a truck in a good way. And so the shift really prioritizes tuning, and your vitality or energy is protected when you use your intuition as a precise tool. So build a container or an outlet for your sensitivity so that you can see the truth without drowning in it. And so this eclipse really challenges you to become a fine tuner of your energy. Choose what to let in, choose what to do with it so that you can, find the clear music that is hidden within the static at this time. If your sun is in the first house, the reboot is happening in the most personal room of your life. It's with your identity and your physical presence. And because this is a night chart, the shift is quiet, internal, and somatic. There could be a shedding of skin that happens in the dark. And you could feel like this physical buzz or restlessness in your body that signals that the old you is expiring. And it can manifest as a sudden urge to maybe change your name, your style, or simply feeling unrecognizable to yourself in the mirror because there's a new part of you that's almost unlocked, like a new avatar in a video game that you are now inspired to embody. And the nuance is that this upgrade is entirely internal. It could be triggered by external things, but it is mostly internal. And your vitality returns when you allow yourself to undergo this private metamorphosis without rushing to explain it to anybody else. And this eclipse advises you to let the world meet the new you only when the private transformation is complete. If your sun is in the second house, the reboot is happening in the vault of your values or your sense of self worth. And while this could ripple out into your finances, the core shift is about what you define as security. And so you could feel a wobble in your confidence or a sudden realization that the things that you own don't really anchor you in the way that maybe they used to. And it can manifest as maybe a sudden change in income or simply a spiritual inventory where you decide to trade accumulation for freedom. And the nuance is decoupling your ego from your assets, and your vitality returns when you realize that true wealth is your intellect, your skills. It's what you dedicate your time to. And it's also in your ability to adapt. And this eclipse can prove that your true worth will lie in the unique frequency of who you are becoming as long as you lean strongly into it. Sun in the third house. This reboot is kind of happening in the circuitry of your mind and your immediate environment. And you might feel like your brain is being rewired, really leading to a flood of ideas that are brilliant, but maybe hard to articulate. I relate to this. I'm a third house sun as well. And this can manifest as a disruption, maybe in your daily commute, or a change in your relationship with siblings or your immediate environment, or a sudden urge to really learn a new language or code. For me, it's my routines are changing. So yeah, it's kind of crazy. I already feel it. And the nuance is that the noise functions as a download. And so you are actively upgrading your processor in real time. And your vitality is really preserved when you give yourself quiet time to integrate this mental surge instead of trying to broadcast every thought immediately. And so this eclipse urges you to silence the chatter to hear the single brilliant transmission that is trying to come through in your life. Sun in the fourth house, the reboot is happening at the very root of your life, in your home and your emotional foundation. And so the energy is a deep and subterranean energy. It's really shaking up your sense of belonging and your private sanctuary. And so you could feel a sudden detachment, maybe from your family history, or even just a literal urge to move the furniture, to change the energy, or to just move altogether. It could be as big as that. And this could manifest as maybe a domestic surprise or even just an internal realization that you've outgrown maybe the traditions or the conditioning that you were raised with. And the nuance is that you were renovating your comfort zone, and your vitality returns when you clear the air in your home or your private life and create a space, whether it's emotional or physical, that reflects who you are now. And so this eclipse compels you to plant yourself in new soil that actually feeds the future version of who you want to be. Sun in the fifth house, the reboot is happening in the playground of your heart, really affecting your creativity and your capacity for joy. This is about the private spark of what makes you feel alive. And you could feel bored with maybe your usual hobbies or struck by a sudden unconventional desire to express yourself in a new way. And this can manifest as maybe a romantic surprise or a creative block that breaks open all of a sudden into a radically new style that feels more authentic or freeing to you. And so the nuance is really shifting to that authentic expression, and your vitality can be renewed when you start playing for the sheer electric thrill of discovery. And this eclipse really inspires you to create for the quiet electric joy of your own soul, and that is how you can thrive at this time. Sun in the sixth house, the reboot is happening in the engine room of your daily life, really affecting your routine and maybe even your physical health in some ways, not in a bad way, but maybe just, you realize how you can feel even better in your routines. And the body is really your hardware, and it is at this time requesting a software update to handle the new energy in your life. And so you could feel a nervous energy that maybe disrupts your sleep or a sudden intolerance for an inefficiency in your workday. Maybe work gets a little bit cray cray, and it can manifest as maybe a health wake up call or spontaneous reorganization of your schedule. It can manifest in so many ways, so pay attention to it and don't freak out over it because it could be a great thing. Because the nuance is that these glitches really utilize your body's intelligence to force you to slow down or to pivot, and your vitality returns when you listen to the signals and hack your routine to really support your nervous system. And so this eclipse highlights your body as the dashboard, telling you exactly how to navigate this new speed. Sun in the seventh house. This reboot is happening in the open space of your relationships and your contracts with others. It's how you sort of relate to others and the mirror of yourself through another person. And because you have a day chart with Sun in the seventh house, this shift could be very visible. It could be transactional and involves like a clear, relationship issue. Maybe not even an issue, but at least a dynamic. And so you could feel a sudden change in the dynamics of a partnership, maybe a need for space or a shift in the balance of power, or just, in how you relate in general. And this could manifest as maybe others acting out of character, or even just a sudden clarity that the terms of engagement in your life need to be rewritten. And so the nuance is that a shift in the contract allows for evolution, and your vitality returns when you allow for autonomy and you update the agreement to reflect who you are today and how you want to connect. And so this eclipse demonstrates that, how you bond with others can evolve into something that can be, more innovative and freeing, and it can help you survive and thrive in the future. Sun in the eighth house, the reboot is happening in the deep currents of shared resources, debts, psychological entanglements. It is the deep parts of life. And this is where your energy kind of merges with outside forces or maybe other people. And the eclipse is bringing a flash of lightning to these shadows. So you could feel a spike of adrenaline regarding money, loans, or intimate trust. And it could manifest as maybe a financial surprise, maybe a sudden release of a debt, or a moment of intense vulnerability where control is lost. And so the nuance is that the release of control kind of serves as a liberating moment for you. You have to embrace it that way. Aquarius is about freedom. And so your vitality can be preserved when you stop fighting the current and trust that the release is clearing space for a more equitable flow of power in your life. And so this eclipse shows that the true power flows most freely through open hands. Sun in the ninth house. The reboot is happening in the part of your chart that is your compass. It affects your worldview, your beliefs, and how you expand your horizons. And you could feel like your internal map is spinning, really forcing you to reorient towards this new North Star. And so this could manifest as a sudden opportunity to expand your horizons, maybe to travel. Maybe there's a shift in your educational path, or even just like a change or a challenge to your philosophy inspired by external events, since you do have a day chart. And so the nuance of this, transit for you is discovery, because you are expanding the territory you are willing to explore, and your vitality returns when you embrace the role of the student, willing to drop your old assumptions in exchange for a wider, more futuristic perspective. And this eclipse really dares you to walk off the edge of your map and discover what is next in your life. Sun in the 10th house. The reboot is happening at the very top of your chart. It happens with maybe your career, your reputation, your public legacy. And so the spotlight could be flickering, and the script you have been following could be rewritten in real time. So there could be a sudden pivot in your ambition, maybe a change in leadership with your current role, or a desire to be known for something entirely different or to go for something different. And this could manifest as a new job title, maybe a moment of public visibility, or a realization that the ladder you have climbed your entire life is no longer relevant to where you want to go. And so the nuance is impact, and your vitality can be renewed when you focus on the innovation that you can bring to the world and go towards that no matter what. And this eclipse really insists that your true legacy, your true impact is going to be built on the innovation you bring to the present moment. And so focus on that at this time, and you can get to where you want to go. Sun in the 11th house. The reboot is happening in regards to your network, your community, your role in society, and your vision for the future. And this is the house of the collective. And the energy here is very electric, very social. It's connected to all the networks. And so you might feel a sudden shift in your alliances. Maybe you leave one alliance to find another that vibrates at your frequency. Could be on social media, could be in your real life. Take what resonates. And it can also manifest as maybe drama in a friend group or a sudden serendipitous meeting with people who share your vision. And so the nuance for you is to gear it towards belonging, and your vitality returns when you connect with the people who are actively building the future that you want to live in. And so this eclipse encourages you to find the table where your vision is the main course. Sun in the 12th house. The reboot is happening in the hidden room of your subconscious and your spiritual life. And even though you do have a day chart with Sun in the 12th house, the Sun is rising from the deep, really bringing secrets into the light. And so you could feel a strong intuitive pull or a sense that your dreams are kind of bleeding into reality. Could be in a good way, but could be in a way that needs revolution or refinement. And this could manifest as maybe a sudden insight into a self sabotaging pattern, or maybe a need to retreat from the world to process a psychological shift, or maybe you're just getting, a ton of downloads on a very subconscious level that you need to figure out how to process. And so the nuance at this time is that retreat is productive and your vitality is restored by clearing the psychic cache and almost allowing your inner system to reboot in silence so that you can actually process what this download actually is. And this eclipse can lead you to the dark room, as it is almost the only place where the film of your new life can develop. And so, really embrace this at this time to see what that new path is. Natal Saturn and Aries, your structure usually relies on self sufficiency and the instinct to move immediately. However, the Aquarius eclipse acts as a circuit breaker to this solo momentum, introducing a collective detached energy that operates differently than your usual force. And so you could feel a strange tension between the drive to just do it and a sudden need to really coordinate with a wider network or to do something bigger with you, how you want to build structure. And it can feel like revving an engine in neutral or really waiting for a signal that hasn't arrived yet. And the nuance here is that this delay is actually a calibration, and your discipline is being tested to see if it can be really strategic rather than just quick. And so this eclipse urges you to use the pressure to build endurance for the future move rather than forcing the current one. Saturn and Taurus, your structure craves predictability and builds foundations that are tangible, slow, or lasting. And this eclipse is a high frequency contrast to that stability, introducing a fast, digital, or abstract energy. And so you could feel a somatic pressure to speed up your timeline or to modernize your resources to keep up with the changing landscape. And this can manifest as a realization that the ground beneath you is shifting to a new frequency, asking you to trade the known for the innovative. And the shift here is towards sustainable innovation, and your discipline is preserved when you integrate new methods into your routine to secure your foundation. That is the key. So, this eclipse invites you to let the branches sway with the digital wind while your roots stay firm. That is the best way to get through this weather. Saturn in Gemini, your structure is built on logic, facts, and the coherent organization of data. And so the Aquarius eclipse floods your mental server with a high frequency download or maybe radical ideas that may not follow a linear path. And you might feel a sense of mental saturation where your thoughts race to find the logic in the chaos. And it can feel like learning a new language in real time, really creating a concern about being misunderstood while you formulate new concepts. And the nuance is focused reception. Your discipline is strengthened when you channel this mental electricity into one specific area of study rather than trying to analyze the entire flood. And this eclipse really challenges you to structure your mind to receive new paradigms instead of organizing old data. Saturn in Cancer, your structure is built around protection, emotional safety, and the sanctity of your inner circle. So, the detached air quality of the Aquarius eclipse can feel objective and analytical, contrasting with your need to feel safely enclosed. You could feel exposed in a way that feels vulnerable or acutely aware of the weight of the collective emotional state. And this can manifest as a tension between wanting to retreat into your shell and needing to engage with a wider community or to connect in some way. And so the shift represents a move towards objective boundaries, and your discipline is found in observing the emotional waves without feeling responsible for the entire ocean. So this eclipse reminds you that a healthy boundary is the strongest structure you can build for your heart at this time. Saturn in Leo, your structure is tied to identity, your ego, or the legacy of how you create or your expression and how you put yourself out there. And so this Aquarius eclipse kind of shifts that spotlight from the individual to the collective, really asking you to evaluate your contribution. And you could feel a pressure to refine how you express joy, really ensuring that it is authentic rather than just, maybe not, or what you think the world wants to see from you. And it can feel like an internal audit of your personal brand, really checking if your unique light aligns with what the future is going to demand. And the nuance of this transit for you is authentic confidence, and your discipline is renewed when you perform for the integrity of what you're doing itself rather than, the immediate results. And so this eclipse asks you to refine your creative voice so it stands strong regardless of what is happening in the world. Saturn in Virgo, your structure finds safety in order, routine, and perfect systems. And so the Aquarius eclipse is a little bit disruptive, introducing erratic variables that maybe refuse to be filed neatly. And you might feel a heightened nervous system activity at this time or a critical urge to fix things when the environment feels unpredictable. And this can manifest as a concern that missing one detail will cause the system to fail, or really creating a pressure to organize a situation that is in flux. And so the shift here calls for functional imperfection, and your discipline is preserved when you focus on what works practically, even if it isn't neat. You just got to get through the times, if that makes sense. And this eclipse reveals that this glitch that is happening at this time is simply part of a necessary upgrade in your life. Saturn in Libra, your structure maybe relies on diplomacy, relationships, fairness, and established, harmony. And so the Aquarius eclipse can be a little bit rebellious, disrupting that harmony that you work so hard to maintain. And you could feel like the weight of keeping the peace in a polarized environment is super strong at this time, or maybe there's just a realization that you need to assert your own needs to maintain true balance. And this energy can manifest as other people maybe acting unpredictably in your life, really testing the structural integrity of who you're with and what, how you approach balance at the very least. And so the nuance at this time for you is internal equilibrium. And your discipline can return when you structure anything in your life, including relationships, based on something that is honest, aligned, rather than just polite. And this eclipse can teach you that true balance comes from internal strength. And this eclipse could, hit you with a sudden download on what it takes to really establish that balance in your life in a way that is not only, fair and balanced, but is also freeing as well. Saturn in Scorpio, your structure is built around control, privacy, and deep emotional bonding. And so the Aquarius eclipse really demands transparency and open information, which challenges your preference, to maybe deal with things in the shadows. And so you could feel a deep internal intensity or need to protect your inner world as little bits of, vulnerability start to rise to the surface due to the Aquarian nature. And it can feel like a wariness of the unknown or sensation of navigating a complex psychological transition in your life without a map. And so the shift emphasizes strategic surrender, and your discipline is best found in surfing the wave rather than trying to control the ocean. And so this eclipse empowers you to transform your inner landscape by releasing the need to control the external one. Saturn in Sagittarius, your structure is built on your beliefs, your philosophy, and your moral compass. And so the Aquarius eclipse challenges your dogmas with new, radical, and perhaps scientific information. And so you could feel a need for intellectual definition or a sense, you could feel this sense that maybe the current landscape of your life is too small for the territory that you're entering. And this feeling can almost manifest as a tension between your optimism and the cold reality of, what's happening in the world, really forcing you to review the truth that you have built your life on. And so the nuance of this transit for you is an intellectual flexibility, and your discipline is strengthened when you are willing to unlearn and stress test your beliefs against the future. And so this eclipse demands that you let go of beliefs or dogma that cannot hold up to the new world that is developing for you. Saturn in Capricorn, your structure is built on responsibility, achievement, and results. And so this is your natural terrain. However, the Aquarius eclipse strikes at your ambitions, asking you to innovate rather than just maintain. And so you could feel a heavy weight of duty mixed with a concern that the way we've always done it is becoming obsolete. And it can feel like carrying the structure while trying to renovate it simultaneously. And so the shift for this transit for you prioritizes mastery through innovation. You have to embrace both at this time. And so your discipline returns when you can build a new mountain to climb that really aligns with your future rather than clinging to an old peak. And so this eclipse directs you to use your expertise to guide the change rather than to resist it. Saturn in Aquarius, your structure is currently being tested in its own home because this eclipse is happening in your Saturn sign, making this a pivotal moment of definition. And you could feel a pressure to be the voice of reason at this time, maybe within the group or within society, or to at least ensure that whatever is changing is actually like practical, whether it's in your life or on a grand societal level. And this could manifest as a feeling of solitude or maybe the responsibility of seeing the future clearly is weighing on you very heavily while others are still catching up. And so the nuance for this transit for you is to lean into collaboration or lean into a vision that considers the big picture. And your discipline is renewed at this time when you structure your vision so that others can participate, really becoming the architect of whatever it is you're trying to build, even if it's super personal rather than just a dreamer. And this eclipse really urges you to build a framework that can actually hold the weight of your own vision so that when you do enact that vision, it can withstand, what the world is trying to bring to it. Saturn in Pisces, your structure kind of struggles to exist in a boundless ocean, and you try to give form to the formless. And so the Aquarius eclipse kind of increases the psychic noise and the collective static for you, making the world feel loud and sharp. And you could experience maybe a spiritual fatigue or pressure to be practical and objective when your reality feels fluid, which could be hard, but it could also be your ultimate tool at this time. And this can also manifest as maybe a heightened sensitivity that demands you distinguish your feelings from what's going on in the world. And the shift really calls for spiritual containment, and your discipline is found in building this diving bell or a practice that really keeps you safe while you explore the deep in whatever it is that you're exploring in your life. And this eclipse will really remind you that the structure that is kind of like being built is not going to be the enemy of your spirit. It's going to be the vessel that protects it as long as you build that structure correctly. Saturn in the first house, this pressure is being applied to your physical vessel and your identity. And Saturn here often creates a controlled persona for safety, but the Aquarius eclipse kind of disrupts this mask, making your usual armor feel a little bit heavier. And so you could feel a somatic anxiety about being seen or a pressure that your physical vitality or energy is fluctuating as you try to hold everything together. And it can feel like wearing a costume that no longer fits, really creating a friction between who you were and who you are becoming. And so the nuance is taking responsibility for your evolution, and your discipline will return when you build a new self image that incorporates the unique traits that you usually hide. And so this eclipse will urge you to release the rigid defenses and build a lighter, more flexible identity. Saturn in the second house, the pressure is centered maybe on your wallet or your definition of self worth. And Saturn here really works hard for tangible security, but the Aquarius eclipse introduces volatility that threatens your need for predictability. And so you could feel a constriction in your chest regarding resources or a worry that your skills are becoming obsolete in a changing market. And this can manifest as maybe a digital shift in your finances or maybe even a sudden fluctuation that tests your stability, whether internal or external. And the shift is really about disciplining your values. Your discipline is preserved when you modernize how you approach income or self worth and decouple your human worth from your net worth. And this eclipse really invites you to build a financial or self worth structure that really supports your freedom rather than anchoring you in the past. Saturn in the third house, the pressure highlights your mental patterns and your daily interactions, and Saturn here demands authority and speech. But the Aquarius eclipse floods your mind with rapid fire, unconventional ideas, and you could feel a mental saturation or a pressure to understand everything instantly that leads to a sense of analysis paralysis. And it can manifest as a feeling of inhibition in your local environment, or conversely, a pressure to speak up on a collective issue. And so the nuance is disciplining your focus, and your discipline returns when you commit to one subject deeply, really mastering your own thoughts rather than reacting to the noise. And this eclipse challenges you to speak less so that when you do speak, you say more. Saturn in the fourth house, the pressure is deeply private, affecting your home life, maybe your family obligations, your living situation, your innermost self. And Saturn here often carries the weight of the past, but the Aquarius eclipse shakes the foundations of your sanctuary or of your home. You could feel ungrounded in your own home or a heavy emotional burden regarding family expectations that suddenly feel restrictive. And this can manifest as a disruptive element in your domestic sphere that forces a renovation of your living situation in some way. And the shift calls for building your own internal sanctuary or building an external one if that's somehow possible. And your discipline is found in establishing a practice of self soothing and boundaries that you control and only you have the keys for. Nobody else can unlock that. And this eclipse compels you to be responsible for your own safety rather than, waiting for your family structure to provide it or waiting for whatever wounds you have to spontaneously heal. This is where you can take your own autonomy to find your own freedom. Fifth house Saturn, the pressure puts a serious tone on fun to really ask you important questions about joy because Saturn here can make hobbies feel like work or fun feel unattainable, but the Aquarius eclipse demands innovation and freedom in your expression. You could feel a quietness in your heart center or a pressure to produce something genius rather than just playing, and this can manifest as a restriction in your romantic life or a creative project hitting a wall that forces a pivot. And so the nuance is really treating your joy as a serious pursuit. Your discipline returns when your schedule kind of involves your creativity with the same respect that you would give anything else in your schedule. And so this eclipse will ask you to ensure that the structure of what you have in your life that brings you joy actually supports your happiness, not just, it's something that you do out of obligation. It's about becoming free within your joy. Saturn in the sixth house, this pressure will fall squarely on your daily habits, your work, or your physical body. And so Saturn here drives you to serve, but the Aquarius eclipse acts as a system interrupt that forces you to stop grinding. You could feel a somatic stress or nervous exhaustion, the consequence of a machine that has been running on inefficient fuel. And this can manifest as a workplace disruption or a health issue that demands a more modern system for your existence. And the shift is focus really towards automation and simplification where possible. And your discipline is really preserved when you build a routine that prioritizes nervous system regulation above all else. And this eclipse really reveals that the goal is a functional life, not a perfect one. Saturn in the seventh house, the pressure tests the structural integrity of your committed relationships or how you approach relating in general. Could be with contracts as well. And so Saturn here takes contracts very seriously, but the Aquarius eclipse introduces detachment or unexpected behavior from other people in your life. And so you could feel a heavy responsibility to hold a connection together, or maybe a feeling of restriction that makes you want to revise any contracts you have with others for more space or more freedom. And this can manifest as a cooling of emotional warmth or the mirror of another person reflecting back to your own rigidity. Maybe you learn about yourself through another person. And so the nuance is defining the terms, and your discipline returns when you have the mature, objective conversations about expectations. And this eclipse demonstrates that a strong relationship can withstand the pressure of renegotiation. And if it's not strong enough to, withstand this renegotiation, maybe it's not strong enough to hold you. Saturn in the eighth house. The pressure is intense, psychological, and hidden from view almost because Saturn here guards against vulnerability. But the Aquarius eclipse forces a confrontation with what is hiding in the dark. You could feel a deep internal processing or a concern about losing control over shared resources or intimacy, and this can manifest as a fluctuation in taxes, debts, or trust that requires you to look at power dynamics a little bit more objectively. And the shift emphasizes settling debts, whether energetic or literal, to find freedom in your life. And your discipline is found in facing the shadow with a mature sense of resolve. And so this eclipse shows you that transformation is work, but the payout is power and liberation. Saturn in the ninth house, the pressure challenges your worldview and your long term vision because Saturn here builds a rigid moral structure, but the Aquarius eclipse introduces radical information that could disrupt your truth. And you could, almost feel an intellectual frustration or sense that your world is getting smaller or that your credentials are being questioned. And this can manifest as an obstacle in maybe travel or education that forces you to reconsider your map, or maybe you just question your beliefs in general. And so the nuance is that you need to become the student, and your discipline is renewed when you commit to a long term course of study, whether it's formal or informal, based on knowledge, based on experience, not just opinion. And this eclipse really dares you to expand your skills rather than just defending your old borders. Saturn in the 10th house, the pressure is highly visible and impacts your status or your career because Saturn here is ambitious, but the Aquarius eclipse acts as a spotlight asking you to innovate or risk irrelevance. And so you could feel the weight of leadership or performance anxiety related to maintaining your reputation in a changing world, or you may be figuring out how can I find success in a changing world. And this can manifest as a challenge to your authority or a change in your professional role or your goals that could throw you off your center a little bit, but it could be in a good way that's freeing. And so the shift really prioritizes leading with integrity, leading with authenticity. And your discipline returns when you solidify your reputation as somebody who is reliable and forward thinking, and you need to be willing to pivot when it comes to how you approach your goals. And this eclipse insists that you modernize your foundation if you want to leave a lasting legacy or reach the heights that you actually want to reach, even if it's just, feeling safe and secure at your desk job, or it could be much bigger, but whatever it is, embrace freedom within that. Saturn in the 11th house, the pressure really tests maybe your friendships, your role in society, or your long term dreams. And Saturn here really feels responsible for the group or for a cause, but the Aquarius eclipse shakes up your social circle. You could feel a sense of alienation or a burden to organize a community that feels chaotic, or you want to join a cause, but the world seems, a little bit crazy. And this can also manifest as a rift in your network or a realization that your future goals are blocked by societal structures. And so the nuance is really pruning your network, and your discipline is found in surrounding yourself with people who are building something real and people who, align with your vision. And this eclipse really encourages you to reevaluate your goals to ensure that they are structurally sound for the future and that they, consider the changing world and that they are innovative and forward thinking so that whatever you do build can hold the weight of time. Saturn in the 12th house. The pressure is invisible to others but could be heavy to you because Saturn here tries to control the unconscious, but the Aquarius eclipse is doing a deep electric cleaning of your psyche. You could feel a resonant silence or a mental buzz paired with physical exhaustion as you process maybe collective grief or hidden fears. You could get these like downloads that feel blocked almost, and this could manifest as maybe sleep issues or a sense of karmic burden really rising to the surface. So the shift really calls for you to use solitude as a tool, and your discipline is restored when you create a spiritual practice that anchors you in the quiet so that you can process what is going on with such discipline and you can process it accurately, which can help you innovate your mindset. And this eclipse can lead you to face the unseen voluntarily, and you can remove its power to catch you off guard by really taking control of your psyche so that you're the one who's in charge of your psyche, not the other way around.